Well, President Trump will take his message on the road after delivering his State of the Union address last night. Today, the president's campaign announced that he will hold a rally in El Paso, Texas next Monday. It comes after he insisted on Capitol Hill yesterday he will build a border wall. But the president did not mention the 35-day partial government shutdown and only briefly touched on next week's funding deadline. It was the president's first address before a divided Congress, with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi looking right over his shoulder. CBS News polling found reception of the speech is actually split along party lines. 97% of Republicans, 82% of independents approved. Only 30% of Democrats did. Major Garrett has more.
The agenda I will lay out this evening is not a Republican agenda or a Democrat agenda. It's the agenda of the American people.
A typically combative president came with an olive branch to the democratically controlled House chamber, a place he was denied access during the partial government shutdown.
The state of our union is strong.
To avoid another shutdown in 10 days, the president will need a border security deal he called for compromise.
I stand here ready to work with you.
Mr. Trump boasted about job and wage growth, suggested troop withdrawals were coming in Afghanistan and Syria, and announced a second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Vietnam in 3 weeks.
If I had not been elected President of the United States, we would right now, in my opinion, be in a major war with North Korea.
And in a sign of things to come, the president previewed a new defense against House Democrats gearing up to investigate many aspects of his administration.
An economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only thing that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations.
The president stuck to his hostile rhetoric about illegal immigration, referencing gangs, drug dealers, and human traffickers as threats to American citizens.
Tolerance for illegal immigration is not compassionate. It is actually very cruel.
Funding for a border barrier remains a sticking point with Democrats. And for Republicans queasy about another shutdown, Mr. Trump made this vow.
The proper wall never got built. I will get it built.
Some of the president's immigration language drew Democratic groans. Unable to get his way with the former Republican House on immigration, Mr. Trump faced a different move. And look, as scores of women lawmakers wore white to represent the suffragette movement, they shared the spotlight with guests of the first family.
In June, I commuted Alice's sentence.
Like Alice Johnson, first-time nonviolent drug offender released from prison last June.
Officer Mattson, please.
Timothy Mattson, a SWAT officer who was shot while chasing the killer during the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. And Judah Samet, a Holocaust survivor who also survived the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, celebrating his 81st birthday. Happy birthday to you. Brought the room together in song.
Leslie Sanchez, CBS News contributor and Republican strategist, joins me now, as well as Antjuan Seawright. He's a CBSN political contributor and Democratic strategist. Welcome to the team, by the way, Antjuan. Great to have you formally on board. So, Leslie, last night, no national emergency declared, but the president's standing firm that he's going to build that wall. He's going down to El Paso. What do you think the messaging needs to be down there?
Very consistent with what we saw. And think about this, 2 recent border visits. And for a president to do that in such a short, compressed period of time, he's putting that continued emphasis on building the wall and the border security argument. So he's laying out the groundwork, Rena. The question is he going to really play that last card? And fundamentally, I think he laid it out when he's talking about there is a national crisis. The economy is strong. We need to continue the momentum of that. And what we'll see down there is a lot more stories of human trafficking, how Operation Gateway, which was something that was passed back in the 90s, I believe, set up some fencing and some border security there that really deterred a lot of traffic in that El Paso Paso area. And that's a very contentious area. He's also going to say it's now a very safe city. So,
you know, Antjuan, one thing, we're still looking at this February 15th deadline. Are we going to enter another government shutdown at this point? We've heard Nancy Pelosi say she's going to go with whatever this bipartisan commission comes up with, these lawmakers come up with. What do you think the Democratic strategy is if Nancy Pelosi is saying that?
Well, my leader, Mr. Clyburn, laid it out again this morning as he's had done the past several weeks. Democrats are willing to come to the table to deal with border security. They're willing to fix fencing along the border where needed, but also they're willing, if the experts say there's some places where smart walls and all the options are exhausted and there's some need for some reinforcements, then the leader laid out this morning that Democrats are willing to come to the table. So now the ball's into the Republican court. But to the point of the president going down to El Paso, the mayor of the town last night called the president out for basically lying about some of the things going on at the border. And so I go back to what I've been saying all along. This manufactured crisis, this manufactured outrage, and this crisis of convenience by Donald Trump is really all politics, because at the end of the day, the number of illegal people crossing across our borders or attempting to is down, to his credit, than it was 2 years ago. So why was this not a national emergency 2 years ago when those numbers are up? So here we have the president last night going into campaign mode, and he's continuing campaign mode. Now he's taking the show on the road. So he's going down to Texas to really engage his crowd, his base.
You know, it's interesting. The one thing the president did also address was these investigations into himself, and it got some comparisons to some things that President Nixon said during his final State of the Union. I want to play this for you.
An economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only thing that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations. If there is going to be peace and legislation, there cannot be war and investigation.
I believe the time has come to bring that investigation and the other investigations of this matter to an end. 1 year of Watergate is enough.
Smart idea, Leslie, to address this head on last night.
Well, it is in the president's mind. I mean, history is going to show us how, how that ripens in terms of that particular quote. But he's correct in trying to do a couple of things. He's trying to bolster consumer confidence. He's trying to say that we really have a strong economy. Everything's going well. Let's continue some of the Republican agenda. And this is how we do it. Instead of getting tied up in a lot of things that are really just personal witch hunt agenda, politics of personal destruction. And that's where he's aiming this. What fundamentally comes out, though, in the Mueller investigation is where you're going to see Republicans decide which camp to move in. So I think they're moving very gingerly into those waters.
And Antjuan, when you talk about House Intel Chairman Adam Schiff, he says, I'm not going to be intimidated. We're going forward. How do you navigate these waters?
So a couple of things. Congress has a responsibility to be the checks and balances for the executive branch. We can't move away from that. The other thing is, for people who think Democrats want to investigate, let me just tell you, as someone who worked with the Democrats in the Congress, there's two things they're going to do well. They're going to investigate and legislate, and yes, you can do both. At the end of the day, if the president has done nothing wrong throughout this process, then why even bring this up? Why even address this? The Democratic leadership has been very clear. Mueller will finish his investigation, issue his report, and we'll deal with that when it comes. But these cups of corruption that continue to overflow from this administration, the Congress has a responsibility to do that, because the American people need to know what's going on within the government. That's why we have so much distrust in our government, because the Republicans have gone for years without holding their own party accountable.
I think the Democrats have to be very careful here and cannot take on this self-righteous effort, because there's definitely...
You saw Nancy Pelosi going like this when the party was trying to,
There is a long history of corruption on both sides, especially among elected leaders. Certainly those in Congress, finding bundles of cash in the freezer. I mean, I remember a lot of these issues. So correct, we want to illuminate that, but they wanted to really focus on, are these just done for political posturing?
Leslie, there were a number of issues that the president didn't actually touch upon. For instance, climate change, Puerto Rico, gun violence, education, civil rights, voting rights. What does this tell you about his priorities and where he's headed going into 2020?
I think it's the same pillars he's focused on before, right? Securing and making sure we have a strong military defense, securing the national border. There was a national crisis there, doing something about border enforcement. He talked about blue-collar workers and kind of stabilizing trade to ensure that American jobs are coming back. And he did touch on some of those more compassionate issues, for example, with the guests that he had in his box, and particularly judicial reform, criminal justice reform, which is an area that I think Republicans and Democrats can work on together. So it's not a new kind of routine he's doing, but he's solidifying what got him elected.
Donald Trump is a personality genius versus we're expecting him, or some are expecting him to be a policy genius. That's not who he is. You saw Democrats, Stacey Abrams, address what I call the fundamental clouds of what we need to be addressing in this country.
You know what, Antjuan? That's a great segue. I want to actually play for you because these responses, whether it's a Republican response or Democratic response, can go so bad, as we've seen. I want to play for you a little bit of Stacey Abrams last night.
We can do so much more. Take action on climate change, defend individual liberties with fair-minded judges. But none of these ambitions are possible without the bedrock guarantee of our right to vote. Children deserve an excellent education from cradle to career. We owe them safe schools and the highest standards, regardless of zip code. Yet this White House responds timidly, while first graders practice active shooter drills, and the price of higher education grows ever steeper.
So what's been the Democratic response to her response?
Oh, it's been mesmerizing. In fact, people have been in awe. You know, I almost broke down on the air last night because what I saw in Stacey Abrams was my niece and some little black girl in South Carolina saying, you know what, I can go to Yale, I can be a leader in the Georgia House, I can be the first African-American nominee for governor, and I can take the world stage and talk about the issues that matter to everyday American people. All of those issues she laid out in her platform last night were issues that poll above 55% of what Democrats and Republicans want in this country. So I think she's dancing to the beat that America wants, and I love it. And I also think it sends a message to anyone who's doubting where our party's headed. African-American females are the heart and soul of our party, and we saw that clear hand last night, and last night we saw why.
Yeah.
Because Stacey Abrams, she has the it factor.
But, you know, it's even more than the it factor. You know, as somebody who for a profession reads off the teleprompter, it's hard sometimes to connect, you know, to have that sense of authenticity. And it seemed when she told that story about her father giving away his jacket to a homeless man knowing he'd come back, there was a sense of authenticity, I thought, that she also put forward. But Leslie, if you are in the Republican Party, which you are, what are you worried about?
They still let me have my car. You know, despite my criticism, I'm still in the tent.
Leslie,
you know,
if you're with the Republican Party, what are you most concerned about when you look across the Democratic landscape right now?
I don't know if concern would be the word. I think I give tremendous accolades to Stacey Abrams. I think she did a remarkable job in a very difficult circumstances, but she did so, Rena, because of what you said, authenticity. She talked about the voting rights issues. Those were campaign issues that she really rallied on in her campaign. She spoke to issues that were very true to her personal story. In the same way, we have had Republican success, and I would say in a GOP response to Obama 2015, we had Joni Ernst, who was the first Republican coming out of Iowa, a newly elected senator. And she was talking about her family being so poor in the Midwest that they wore the bread plastic bags over their shoes, you know, to keep themselves dry. And people thought it was hokey, but it was very genuine, and it actually spoke a lot to her family values and the values of the party. So when you make that connection, people finally respond well. When you look at the whole field, though, she was someone who did not win her election. You have all these new progressive voices in Congress, and it was a very shrewd, I think, tactic not to select one of them because it's moving from more of a centrist, open appeal to that independent, you know, Democrat, basically, who could say there's really an opportunity for you here, even though you're hearing a lot of noise from the extreme, some would argue, socialist left.
The good thing about American politics is many people have lost races multiple times early on and have gone on to the highest level. There are multiple political lives.
Listen, Fantasia has one of my favorite songs. Sometimes you have to lose to win again.
I know. And so next time I'm going to ask you to sing it on set, Antjuan.
Me and Leslie will do it together.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Leslie Sanchez, Antjuan Seawright. Thank you both.